Hello, everybody. In this video, I decided to pick something a little different. This is the corner of my garage, and very different than the typical landscape that you find on my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to just to challenge myself to try something different. Even though this is not the most exciting thing, but then I think it's just the way where the light comes in and then the bounce light. Just it actually creates a very interesting composition. Something that it's very different than the typical type of work that I do, and I like to challenge myself to try something different. And there's not a lot of color here. It's just mostly just almost like very muted, not a lot of color. But at the same time, I'm gonna change that, and I want to just use that and as an excuse to try and push my color as well. So as you can see, the value study that I did consists of the light tone, mid-tone, and dark tone. And this actually helped solidify the composition that I'm about ready to paint. In fact, I could have just painted this on location. I mean, it's actually my garage, and I decided to take a photo and work from the photo, so it's a little bit easier for me to document this for this video. So before I start, the first thing I would do is have the value study and use that value study to lock in the big shapes. And the whole idea is to just get the big shapes in the right place. And this is not about drawing, spending a lot of time doing the drawing and try to paint from there. So I always like to keep my drawings relatively loose, so that way, if I have to change something, I'm not locked in by the drawings. So in this case, just loosely indicate the line drawings and where the big shapes will be. And I always believe that having just the big shapes in the beginning will actually take care of the smaller details. But also, if any of the small details is drawn out, then I guess I would feel like I'm kind of restricted by the line drawing. So this is not to say that I don't put any emphasis on the drawing. I mean, I do feel it's important to have that the drawings done relatively and making sure that the drawing is I need to spend time on work out the drawing as well. And sometimes, if you're doing a landscape painting, or you're doing a cityscape that requires a lot of perspective, or if you're doing a portrait of some sort that and the likeness is important. In that case, then the drawing becomes a lot more important. And so, but in this case, it just really just there's not a lot of drawing. There's not a whole lot to it. Just having the big shapes in the right place, and the smaller shapes will fit into that big shape. So again, I'm starting to mix the light tone. This is the area where the light hits. So, and this is most likely this area will be the lightest. And I like to have some color variation, even though if you might have seen the reference photo, there aren't that much. The color is mostly muted. It's not It's not one of those bright color that you see on some of my landscape painting. But even though they're still they're not bright, the color's not bright, but I still want to add variation. As you can see, I start out with the kind of a greenish, and then as I move down, it's going to get warmer. So, and then when this thing dries, it's actually going to be really light. You actually feel it. I mean, it's just a small. I mean, it's a very subtle color variations. But I do think it's important to have those variations, even though they're not super obvious. So as you can see, the warmer yellow, which is mixing right now, it's gonna be slightly warmer. Add a little bit of white to just to give it a little bit more a slightly lighter and give that kind of a creamy feel to that. So again, I also the reason I like to use white is not because I want to use it to cover something, but I want to incorporate that so that it actually has a much more a creamy feel to that. And this is something that I like to use in my painting. And the way I use white is not to cover mistakes, but to just get that to blend in with my other color. So I don't think it's there's anything wrong with it. But so yeah, so now I'm kind of getting my light tones down, and I am mixing a slightly darker, and this is going to go on to the mid-tone. If you look at the value study, you'll see that the mid-tone actually occupies for, I would say, 80% of this composition. So I have to mix a big pot of color, and the whole idea at this point is just to what I'm doing is just kind of mixing a big puddle of color. And so within this big puddle, which is actually going to be the mid-tone, and within this mid-tone, there will be quite a bit of variations. As you can see, this is kind of an olive green. And the way I mix color is just sometimes I use whatever I have on my palette, and then I would actually mix up with another color. And so so really, it's just I don't know how. I mean, I don't know the exact recipe. Like I just go look at my color, and then I would actually judge my color based on what is currently like what is around it, and so this way I'm not. I judge by the feel, by the look of that, and by what's already down. So that way, it's there's no way of like a formula. I know some artists like to say what mixture, like how much what combination. The honest truth is, I actually go by the mostly values, and here I am, like I'm mixing a slightly darker and warmer, and as you can see, as I go further up, it gets slightly darker, and I believe I have some, I would say, almost magenta, and so it's this is the time where I'm like very I don't try to and this is the when I have to be careful. It's when I have to make sure that I keep a certain shape, as you can see from the value. I mean, from the reference photo, it's got like some shapes that I have to be careful, and those are the shapes that I slowed down a little bit. But again, it's for the most part the background or the mid-tone. It's going to be some variations of that puddle. So I make up that puddle, and then I use that puddle, and then I would just kind of add some other color to kind of create that variations in there. And so it's not like um, it's not there's not like an exact formula. I just mix that same puddle, and then I use that puddle, and then I add some other. If I want it to be cooler, I add some cool color. If I want it to warmer, I add some warmer color. And then I'm kind of pretty bold about putting those color, and just really quick with the brush, because I want the distribution of the pigments a little bit more even. And if you are slow, if you just kind of go back and forth, you're going to create this pigment that I feel like it muddy things up a little. But you can see now, like toward the upper right corner, it's a little bit cooler. As it comes further down to the lower right, it's actually warmer and slightly darker. So compared to the left side of the background, it's more of a yellow green, and then goes further dark as it goes further up the composition. And then to the right, you'll see it's cooler, and then as it comes down, it gets warmer. So again, at this point, I'm just kind of using that same puddle. I'm just mixing other color in it just to create that other slightly darker. And so this way, it feels like it's part of the same family. So again, you can see I'm kind of careful with these smaller shape, because this is actually quite important, and I gotta make sure these smaller shapes are in the right place. And using a smaller brush, I could just kind of fine tune those shape a little bit. And looking at the value study, you can see clearly see this is, I'm working on my mid-tone now. And then these darker tones, these slightly smaller shapes are just as important, but because I have the big shapes in the right place now, I'm not too worried about, because they really help anchor the smaller shapes. And you can see that I'm mixing a much darker tone on the top of an existing puddle that I use for the mid-tone. And so, and it's actually a lot warmer, because that is the area. It's actually very contrasty, very warm, and a lot of bounce light over there. And so, yeah, so I'm trying to get the shapes as accurate as I can, to also make it interesting as well. And then continue down, getting this is the side that's facing up. It's the edge of the wall. And again, it's just creating a definition of the shape, and just find ways to make interesting shapes now. And these are the small shapes that it's actually, I could design it and to make it interesting. Again, you can see that even within this darker value, you can see the blue, you can see the kind of burnt umber, and then of course toward the very end, it's actually, this is another like a dark shape that we could see, but it's actually quite dark. And also, I have to be very careful to make sure to leave the edge of that, to retain that white edge, because that is I guess that's the wall. That's the area that defines the exterior and the interior of the garage. So again, you can see I use really strong color right there, because that's where the center of interest going to be, and again continue to fine tune the small shapes. At this point, it's just really slowing down and try to design the shape a little bit more, and not using a lot of water. You can see some of the paint that I'm using doesn't have a lot of water. It's just a lot of it. It's just really, really dry right now, and because this is the area that I want to make sure it's kind of dark, and make sure that the shape is it's got interesting design, because this is the center of interest and there's not a whole lot to see in this composition. So other than this, I don't even know what this thing is. This is for me to use to water the plant. So yeah, so this is actually it's just still consider I still consider this a mid-tone. So I'm not entirely done with the mid-tones yet. But again, it's just the long process that's taking. It'll take some time to make sure the shape is done right, because there's, like I said, there's not a lot to see in this composition. So whatever I'm showing here, I gotta make sure it's the I mean the drawing is done. It's gonna look like at least close to what I'm trying to paint. So unlike painting a landscape or like a forest or tree, I feel like no one's gonna judge you too much if the tree is a little bit bigger, smaller, but these objects are very specific. So it does require some attention to the details, and it's not something that I guess it's if you design a tree or something, it's there's a lot more leeway. It's instead of like in this case, it's a little different. So I'm still now working on the kind of the dark midtone and the small shapes. Again, because it's such a simple composition, all these little shapes becomes very important. And some of the things you can be expressive, but I feel like the design has to be there. The drawing has to be accurate. So, and this is the part that I feel like you can't skip. You just have to you have to get it right. And if you get it wrong, then it's gonna look weird. And looking at the reference photo, you can see some of these shapes. I mean, even like I'm not 100% like matching what the reference photo, but at least I want to make sure that it looks right. It doesn't look like it's too wonky, and it still kind of retain the style that you see, that you recognize in my work. And I mean, it's not like my work is not really super tight, but it does have some resemblance to what you're painting. And so these are the little things that you'll see when you put in your painting, and depending on the like how you treat these little details, it's gonna determine the look and feel of your work. And also, people will recognize your work based on your mostly the choice of color, the where you put your emphasis on your subject matters, and just the way you the way you put down the marks, and how where do you put your focus. And so those are the little things that you put in your painting without knowing, without even thinking about it. And so, and I think it's important to be true to yourself and paint stuff that you like to see. And over time, I think your style, your everything is going to come through the way, yeah. So the way you paint. So going back to the painting, yes. So I'm actually painting the shadow side. You can see this is the side that's away from light, and you can see I try to make it a little bit warmer to kind of give the impression that the it's in the shadow, but at the same time, it's actually getting reflected light from that wall. And again, it's just defining these little shapes. What you choose to focus on, it's gonna change the I guess the result of your painting. And these are the little things that it's important to me to get it right, to make sure that thing looks solid, to make sure that even though it still doesn't look exactly like the reference photo, but when people look at it, they know they know what it is. So again, taking your time to get these things done right, it's important. It's gonna affect the look and feel of your painting. And so this is the again the stage where I'm almost done with the blocking. I feel like it's a point where my darks are, my midtones are in, my dark tones are kind of at a point where I'm putting in my dark tone as well. And because this is a simple composition, it's just making sure that all the major shapes are defined, are clear. My mid tone is clear, my light tone is clear, and my dark tone is clear. So this way, when I go into the next stage of excuse me, polishing, then again, this is a point where I'm gonna put in the smaller shapes, because now the big shapes are locked in, and the overall feel, it's almost there. And now it's time to put in these smaller shapes. And I call these smaller shapes, I simply mean it's just more details. And it's because these things are becoming important now. These are the smaller shapes, and these are the shapes that's going to matters, because the viewer wants to see some details, but but you don't want to show them everything. You want to kind of show them just enough. So again, I'm just kind of putting in the smaller shape, the details. These, I guess this is supposed to be wires, and but again, I look at these as just shapes, smaller shapes. These are just smaller shapes within the big shapes. Again, at this point, having a everything pretty much lock in. I feel like it's the color, the value structure is there. The overall composition, I like it. It's like I said, it's got a kind of a graphic and abstract feel to that. So again, it's different than the typical landscape that I usually do, but I enjoy challenging myself a little bit and try something different from time to time. And so yeah, continue with details. And some of my students ask, like, for me to do like from start to finish, and oftentimes this is the part that takes the longest. This part, the stage, the adding detail, just know where to add details, and it takes the longest. And now I'm actually once the smaller shape in, I decided to use a razor blade to scratch out the light of this shape. There are different ways to do it. I mean, some people like to use masking fluid. Some people like to use white, and there are other multiple different ways of getting the similar result. But I think ultimately it doesn't matter what technique that you use, but having an idea where you want to go with this, it's much more important, um, in my opinion. And sometimes it's just learning a technique, or use masking fluid. It's just like it's just technique, but know what to do with that. It's much more important. So again, I'm just continue to add more details to kind of darken a certain area, warm it up a certain area, and this is that stage that usually takes a good, I would say, 3-4 hours from the time that I'm done with my block in, and typically this is the time that I feel this is the stage that it takes the longest, and yet it feels like it feels like taking forever. And this is the reason why I enjoy the block in the most. I feel like that is the most creative and exciting part of the painting, is doing the block in, is just having to block in the work out the value structure, or the using a value study, and then just mix the color and work out the structure. That is, to me, that's the most exciting. And by the time I'm done with the blocking, and the blocking oftentimes takes, typically, depending on for a 9 by 12, typically it takes about like half an hour to 45 minutes. But then the polishing part, which is I'm doing right now, this is the part where it takes the longest. And if you're not careful, sometimes you overwork your painting. Sometimes you have like all these details that you feel like it's important to include that in your painting, and more often than not, it's not really necessary. And if you really think about, be more mindful about what you put in there, and how much do you want to show your audience. And I think those are much more important than just keeping adding details. So again, be selective in terms of what kind of detail to be included, and it's much more important to give your audience something to think about. Allow some area that's unfinished, and it's much more interesting if your audience can bring in their experience to your painting, and I feel like this is the area where they can help you finish your painting. That's how you can connect with them. Again, it's just having work on it a little bit, stop, take a break, and don't just don't like sit there and just do one painting and try to finish in one session. So yeah, so this is we're getting close to the end of the painting session. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you like this, please subscribe and share. And feel free to leave your comment. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye.